The rhythmic hum of the highway and the faint crackle of static on the radio were enough to lull me into a light sleep. Jake was behind the wheel, taking the first driving shift on our late-night business trip. I trusted him, calm, level-headed Jake, who always seemed to know the best shortcuts and scenic routes. The last thing I remembered before drifting off was the monotonous expanse of highway stretching endlessly into the dark. When I woke up, everything was wrong. The car was no longer moving. Instead, it idled softly on the side of the road, headlights dimmed. At first, I thought Jake had pulled over for a quick rest, but then I noticed the driver's seat was empty. My half-asleep mind struggled to process the empty silence. "Jake?" I called out, my voice cracking against the quiet. Nothing. The only sound was the faint chirp of crickets and the low hum of the engine. I grabbed my phone to check the time, but there was no signal, not even a single bar. Outside the car, the road was empty, a black ribbon stretching into nothingness, bordered by dense patches of woods. My pulse quickened as I circled the vehicle, calling out for Jake. I checked the trunk, the shoulder of the road, even the tree line, but there was no sign of him. That's when I saw them. Footprints in the dirt, trailing away from the car and into the forest. My first instinct was to yell again, to demand he answer me, but the sight of those lone footprints in the dark unsettled me. It wasn't like Jake to wander off without a word. Swallowing my fear, I hesitated by the car door, debating whether to follow or wait. The longer I stood there, the deeper my unease grew. Something wasn't right. I reached into the glove compartment and grabbed a flashlight before stepping toward the forest. The beam of light cut through the dark, illuminating the dense underbrush. "Jake?" I called again, louder this time. My voice sounded thin and fragile against the oppressive quiet. The trail of footprints disappeared into the woods, each step pulling me further from the safety of the road. A glint of metal caught my eye in the clearing ahead. My heart sank as I approached. Jake's keys lay on the ground, as though they'd been dropped deliberately, but Jake was nowhere to be found. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at Jake's keys lying in the clearing. The flashlight's beam wavered slightly in my trembling hand, casting long shadows across the trees. I couldn't understand why he'd dropped them, or why he'd leave them so far from the car. The clearing was eerily silent, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears and makes every rustle of leaves feel deafening. I crouched down, gripping the keys tightly, as if holding them could tether me to some kind of safety. The beam of my flashlight swept across the clearing again, but there was no sign of Jake. The air felt heavy, suffocating, as though the forest itself was pushing me away. For the first time, I considered the possibility that something or someone had lured him here. My pulse quickened as I stood, calling his name again. "Jake, where are you?" My voice cracked, echoing uselessly against the surrounding trees. That's when I saw it. Movement between the trunks, just barely visible in the beam of light. At first, I thought it might be Jake, but the figure was too tall, too broad, and moved with deliberate slowness. My heart sank. Whoever it was, they weren't responding to my calls. I froze, my grip tightening around the flashlight as the figure stepped closer, its silhouette growing sharper against the darkness. "Jake?" I called out one last time, but I already knew it wasn't him. The figure stopped just outside the clearing, lingering in the shadows as though testing my resolve. I backed up slowly, my legs stiff with fear, trying to put distance between us without turning my back. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice shaking. The man stepped forward, just enough for the flashlight to illuminate his face. His expression was calm, eerily so, and he was dressed casually, jeans, a jacket, boots. For a moment, I wondered if he might be another driver who had pulled over, someone who'd seen Jake and wanted to help. But the way he looked at me, the way his eyes locked onto mine without a word, made it clear he wasn't here to help. "You looking for someone?" he asked casually, his voice low and steady. His lips curved into a faint smile, but it wasn't friendly. My throat felt tight as I struggled to respond. "Where's Jake?" I managed to ask, though the question came out more as a plea than a demand. The man's smile widened slightly, and he pulled something from his jacket pocket. It was a second set of keys, identical to the ones I held in my hand. He dangled them in front of me, his grin sharpening. "He's around here somewhere. Should have stayed in the car." The man's calm smile lingered as he dangled the keys, his movements deliberate, as though he enjoyed watching me struggle to make sense of the situation. My heart raced, every instinct screaming at me to put as much distance between us as possible, but I couldn't move. My feet felt rooted to the ground, frozen by fear and confusion. "Where is he?" I demanded, my voice trembling but firm. The man tilted his head, as if amused by my question. "He's around," he said, his tone casual, almost mocking. "You shouldn't have followed." With that, he pocketed the keys and turned toward the shadows, his figure blending into the darkness. For a brief moment, I thought he was gone. Relief crept in, but it was short-lived. The sound of crunching leaves shattered the silence, coming from the opposite side of the clearing. I whipped around, my flashlight's beam cutting through the trees. Another figure stood there, partially obscured by the branches. My pulse spiked, the flashlight shaking in my grip as I tried to make out the details. It wasn't Jake, but the man again. Or so I thought. No, it was someone else. Their frame was smaller, their movements hesitant, as though unsure whether to approach. "Jake?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. The figure stepped closer, but still no reply. My mind raced, torn between the hope that it might be Jake and the fear that this was part of some elaborate game. Then I heard it, a sound that sent a chill down my spine. The car engine revved, distant but unmistakable. Panic surged as I realized I wasn't holding the keys anymore. Somehow, I had dropped them in my frantic attempt to keep track of the man. My flashlight flickered as I sprinted back toward the road, adrenaline propelling me forward. When I reached the edge of the woods, my worst fear was confirmed. The car was gone. The taillights were faint in the distance, disappearing down the road. My chest heaved as I struggled to process what had happened. Turning back toward the clearing, I caught one last glimpse of the man. He stood motionless, a faint smirk on his face, as though satisfied with his work. I stumbled onto the shoulder of the road, feeling both defeated and relieved to escape the woods. Jake was gone, and, with him, the car. The man had outmaneuvered me, his motives remaining a mystery. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that this was never random, that he had been waiting for us all along.